Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a real head-scratcher of a business mystery. We often wonder, why is it that perfectly brilliant, incredibly sustainable ideas sometimes just hit a total brick wall of market resistance? Today, we're going to look at exactly what happens when undeniable scientific success collides head-on with human nature.
Picture this for a second. You launch an agricultural project in Madagascar, and you deploy a completely new model. The result? Rice crop yields absolutely skyrocket. We're talking up to 400%. And at the exact same time, you're drastically slashing the use of toxic chemicals. It's a massive win for the environment, a huge win for the local farmers, and just a shining example of corporate innovation. Sounds like a total home run, right? But that brings us to a huge paradox. If this initiative was objectively superior in literally every single measurable way, why on earth was it completely shut down and abandoned?
Section 1. The Performance Economy Paradox. Selling results, not objects.
To actually figure out this mystery, we've got to wrap our heads around a massive shift in economic thinking. See, in the traditional linear economy we're all used to, a company extracts resources, makes an object, sells it, and eventually, it just becomes waste. But in a performance economy, you aren't selling objects anymore. You're selling the actual function or the result that the object provides while the company holds on to the ownership of the physical goods.
So here's the catch. By keeping ownership and internalizing all those liabilities and waste costs, companies are suddenly heavily incentivized to prevent waste. Think about it. If a company owns the equipment for its entire lifespan, building long-lasting, highly efficient systems isn't just some nice PR goal anymore. It literally becomes the core driver of their profitability.
Section 2. Madagascar, the Pesticide Rebellion. Ciba-Geigy's Integrated Crop Management.
Let's look at how this actually plays out in the real world. Back in the late 1980s, the Swiss agrochemical producer Ciba-Geigy was facing a massive crisis. They were being accused of poisoning rice farmers in Madagascar with their pesticides. So they made a radical pivot. Instead of the old model, just selling tons of toxic chemicals, they shifted to a performance model. For the exact same price, they started selling the service of guaranteed pest-free fields where they expertly managed the crops themselves. And honestly, the results on the ground were staggering. By applying chemicals only when absolutely necessary, toxic pesticide use plummeted by 70%. Meanwhile, crop yields for those farmers, they absolutely exploded. The performance economy was working flawlessly.
But here is where human nature kicks in. When Ciba-Geigy stopped selling raw volumes of chemicals, they ended up completely bypassing their traditional middlemen. The local distributors, who used to make a killing off those high volumes, suddenly lost their market power and their revenue streams. And, as you might guess, they fiercely rebelled.
It was an incredibly swift rise and fall. The project launched in the late 80s, achieved undeniable success by the early 90s, and yet it was entirely abandoned by 1995. Despite being a total win for the environment and the farmers, those distributors fought tooth and nail to protect their old linear economy profits, completely killing the sustainable innovation.
Section 3. Mobil, the long life trap. Synthetic oil and the motor diagnostic service.
Okay, let's flip things around and look at the consumer side of the equation, specifically with a massive innovation in the automotive world. In the early 1990s, Mobil introduced Mobil 1. This was a synthetic engine oil so incredibly advanced that it could stretch out your oil change to 40,000 kilometers without risking the engine. Environmentally and technologically, a massive leap forward. Way less waste oil, way less extraction. But here's the problem. Selling oil that lasts drastically longer means, you're selling way less oil overall. To offset that hit, Mobil tried creating a performance-based service. They asked customers to pay for a motor diagnostic service that analyzed the used oil for engine wear. And the market's reaction? A flat-out rejection. Customers absolutely loved the long-lasting oil, for sure, but they completely refused to pay for the diagnostics.
See, Mobil successfully achieved the very definition of quality in a performance economy. They optimized system functioning over a long period. But they totally failed to convince everyday consumers to value and actually pay for an invisible, preventative maintenance service. People were just too stuck in the habit of paying for physical stuff, not data. So Mobil ultimately had to scrap the entire strategy.
Section 4. Why good ideas fail. The human element of systemic change.
Which brings us right back to the core of our mystery. Why do these objectively superior, perfectly efficient systems hit a brick wall? When we put both of these case studies together, a glaring pattern jumps right out. Ciba-Geigy nailed a 400% yield increase, but failed because B2B distributors lost their market power. Mobil nailed a 40,000-kilometer oil life, but failed because of stubborn consumer habits. The data makes it crystal clear: having technological and environmental success is never, ever enough on its own.
To make one of these circular performance-based models actually stick, you actively have to design for human psychology. Superior tech and green benefits are literally just the entry ticket. You have to overcome deeply ingrained daily habits. You have to anticipate and plan for the fact that stakeholders are going to rebel if their livelihoods are threatened. You really have to carefully manage that transition of market power. If you just drop a perfect system into an imperfect, human market, it's going to be rejected.
It all really boils down to a powerful truth from circular economy pioneer Dr. Walter R. Stahel. He said, "Do not underestimate resistance to change and loss of market power from existing partners." Hit the nail right on the head, didn't he? A sustainable innovation will undoubtedly fail if you ignore the human habits and the market forces that it disrupts.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a bit of a provocative thought. Take a look at the systems around you today. If a radically sustainable, performance-based idea completely disrupted your industry tomorrow, making things perfectly efficient, who would lose their power? And who would be the very first to rebel? Keep that in mind the next time you hear about a perfect solution that somehow never made it to market. Thanks for hanging out with me, and keep questioning the systems around you.